Ladies and gentlemen, before we get started, I want to admit a bit of a story that I know several people have heard before, so forgive me for repeating this for those of you who have. I have a small bit of history with this game. I guess I do with the whole Zelda series, because obviously, right, I've played many Zelda games to death. I've been a Zelda fan since Link to the Past, and I have, obviously, I've done a Zelda lore run at this point. Never mind the fact that I've done an entire Zelda block, and we've already covered the majority of the Zelda games at this point in time. So obviously, I've played the hell out of Majora's Mask, right? This is only my third playthrough of this game, the one we're doing right now. And I don't know if it's going to be my last playthrough. That depends on if this game ever comes out on something other than 3DS. You're probably thinking, oh, it's because you hate the game, right? So, back in the day, there I was with my N64, and I had to get this whole other extra expansion pack just to get this game playable. There are only two games that actually require that expansion pack. One of them is Donkey Kong 64, a game I hate, and the other one is this one. So, I just want you to be in that general mindset. Obviously, I was already, a teenager at this point. In fact, this is the year 2000 at this point, so I was already in the workforce. I'd already graduated, I think, at this point. I'm not sure the exact timing. I'd have to look that up. But either way, I was like, hey, let me look that up, actually. Majora's Mask. What month was this? Let's see. Okay, it was October. So yeah, I had already graduated, and I was already kind of doing the college cycle. I went out, bought the expansion pack, bought Majora's Mask. Of course I did. Actually, that's a lie. I got a friend's copy. But the point is, I was like, yes, I can't wait to play this game. I'm so looking forward to the new Zelda game, especially after how many times I replayed Ocarina. Especially when I was going through the latter times of high school. I used to replay the hell out of that game. So I'm like, all right, let's do it. Let's play it. I basically didn't reach Clocktown. I'm pretty sure I actually did reach Clocktown, but by the time I got there, I was so turned off from the game that I never even did the first day cycle. I just was like, well, that was terrible. And immediately returned to the game and didn't touch it for 12 years, something like that. Just walked away from it completely. I really, really hated the intro. I could not stand. It's actually funny. The intro that I am referring to entirely has to do with it's very nightmare-y, right? It's very in vague, kind of creepy, awful, inconsistent dream logic thing. Feverish is a good word for it. The kind of thing that I hate. I'm not a big fan of being fever-induced, and that was exactly how the intro was, especially on the N64 title. It's actually a little bit better here in the 3DS version, not quite as wonky. One of the things they like to do a lot, I'm not into drug trips. One of the things they did a lot on earlier systems, PS1 and N64 both, is they would deliberately, artistically use an absence of assets in order to make something kind of imply something, right? You've seen this before, because we've already seen this in Ocarina, right? Like, they don't actually show the battle with Bongo Bongo because they can't. That's just one example of what I'm talking about. So in the N64 version, it's all weird and trippy and in these giant vacuous empty spaces. And I'm mentioning that specifically because it created a disconnect on top of the feverishness. So I had no idea where I was, what I was doing, what was going on, and that's on top of the drug trips. That was pretty much strike 4, you're out for me. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I got to the town and I roamed around a bit. Had no idea what I was doing. Couldn't figure out anything about starting the game. Couldn't get out of the town. Walked away from it. Didn't look back. Years and years and years later, I saw it for sale at a used game store for like, God, $200, something like that. And in my mind, that solidified, nope, I'm not even touching that. Many, many, many years passed. And finally, I pick up my 3DS, and the only game that was on the 3DS at launch, which was the Ocarina of Time remaster in 2011. I was like, this is cool. Then Link Between Worlds comes out 2 years later, and I'm like, oh my god, and I just ate that game up. And then 1 year later, 2015 now, it's only 9 years ago, Majora's Mask 3D came out. Now, by this point, I had already had a little bit of presence on the internet. In fact, if you're paying attention, my show actually predates the existence of this game. That's how long, that's how long I've been doing this. And so by this point, I was well aware of the internet discourse, and a lot of people held Majora up as the best Zelda. And I'm like, okay, sure. So I bought it, went in, picked it up, went in, started pushing through it, and lo and behold, I still hate the intro. I'm still probably giving it a negative. But not when you get to the town. You get the point. But yeah, no, it's a great game. I love Majora's. The problem is because it's so recent in my life. That's why I've only replayed it twice, or rather, only played it twice. Once with that 100% run, and once the last time I streamed it. This will be my third playthrough. So that's my personal history with this game. I don't know if anybody else has anything even approximating that. But I bet a lot of you have something like that with another game. Like there's some game that you just wanted to try or poked at, and something about it just made you go, nope. You just walked away from it, right? And then years later, you go back and it's like, oh, I have a few games like that in my life, actually. Dragon Age Origins comes to mind immediately. Go figure. This is one of the reasons I'm so harsh about intros and outros. You really, really need to nail that intro. Because holy crap. Extraordinarily short dev time for this game. It's actually nothing short of shocking how short the development time is for this game. 17 months by all accounts. Some people say 15 months, some people say 18, but 17 months is a general average. And I want you to think about that for just a second, because this game was made in 17 months. This is a huge reason for the asset reuse and the reuse of code and the reuse of basically everything. There was a lot of ideas that weren't in Ocarina that just kind of got copied over into here and given a slightly different bit of context to change it around. A lot of the mini games, a lot of even... I'm saying that wrong. You know the sequence where you have to defend against the aliens? Well, that was in Ocarina. It's just... think about it from a programming perspective. Remove the aliens and remove the people we're defending, and instead just think about there's a targetable object that's homing in on another object. Think about it from a purely code perspective. Remove all texture, all brickwork, all context. That's the kind of stuff that didn't end up in Ocarina, but they'd already programmed. A lot of that stuff got literally just copy-pasted over into Majora and repurposed, like with the aliens and the cows, for example. Just stuff like that. There's a whole lot of reused code. They had to. They were told they get a year. They managed to push that a little bit, but they were told you get 1 year. Otherwise, screw you. And it's like, okay. And this led to an extraordinary amount of crunch, which, if you remember, was absolutely rampant at Nintendo at this point in history. As much as I love LTTP and Super Metroid and Yoshi's Island and Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, all these games unfortunately were made on the backs of real-life people who damaged their health permanently to do so. Aonuma talks to this very day. I shouldn't say that way. That's exaggerative. The last interview I saw from Aonuma about this was last year. And so as recently as within the last year, he has talked about how awful working on Majora's Mask was. Not like a troubled production cycle, not like Skyward Sword. Just destroying, right? One of the biggest reasons, this is not a joke, one of the biggest reasons why so many specific scenes in the game have that nightmarish vibe to them is because the developers were pouring real-life nightmares they were having into the game as they were developing it. Not just Aonuma, but several people. If I'll try to point this out as we go through, a lot of the individual bits of the dialogue throughout this game are specifically the devs ranting and venting about the awful working conditions they had into the NPCs in the game. Like, there's so many aspects of this, which was just making them go, they hated it. They hated every moment of it. And I feel very, very, very badly for the people who had to make this game. It is a damned shame. And yeah, the excessive usage of the masks mechanic as a form of a transformation. There was originally going to be a transformation mechanic back in Ocarina, which makes sense if you think about it, because there are transformation mechanics in Ocarina. They're just not used like this. So using the masks as a transformation thing, yeah. Whole lot of stuff like that. Really quick, thank you very, very much, Jesse's Mask. As always. So very, very, very mean production is the way I want to describe this. If I can be, I don't want to get on a high horse here. I hope more games like this are never made again. I know that sounds strange. Nobody deserves to have their livelihood hurt in the way that was required to make this game. I would like to believe, I don't know if I'm right or not, but I would like to believe that we can make games of this level of quality and uniqueness without causing that kind of personal damage to the individuals making it. I don't know if that's true or not, because adversity is a near universal thing that creative and talented people can and do use in order to make games like this. Look at every major musician ever, for example. So this game is also so I mentioned the reuse thing, right? This led to the creation of Termina. Originally, it was supposed to be its whole other thing, right? Like it was a completely separate concept. That's a good point, Jesse's Mouse. That is important to keep in mind. There's this whole other dimension called Termina, and the whole reason for that is because of the asset reuse. They couldn't make new NPCs. They couldn't make new models. They couldn't make new textures. So they didn't. Instead, they come up with this, it's alternate Termina. It's this other place. It's right next door to Termina. And interestingly enough, this was actually a bit of a sea change for the Zelda franchise as a whole. Because while we've had alternate dimensions twice, actually, up to this point, once in Link's Awakening and once in LTTP, honestly, this is kind of the first time they've pulled the specific alternate dimension trick, where there's just like an other reality, which is fairly similar to this reality right over there. Phantom Hourglass would do the same thing. Several Zelda games from this point on would do the same concept. And if nothing else, this definitely popularized the idea. Ascending a trend and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. There's this game. So we're playing the 3DS version. Aonuma went back and specifically replayed the N64 version of this game prior to the development, when Grezzo was sitting down and saying, hey, we're going to go and start working on the 3DS thing, get some input. And Aonuma sat down and replayed the N64 version and actually made a list. He called it the what in the world list, as in what in the world was I thinking back then. And as I mentioned, it was mostly issues and design concepts due to stress and crunch. And so he came up with a laundry list of stuff he wanted to fix. Now, this sounds familiar because a lot of this stuff was the kind of stuff that was fixed in Ocarina. And with literally one exception, all of those fixes in Ocarina are, in my opinion, superior. So the 3DS Ocarina version is like 99% better, right? But then there's Majora's Mask. Now, I'm going to go against the grain here, as I always have. I think the majority of the changes in Majora's Mask 3D are for the better. I am with most of these. The quality of life features, the additional control features, the additional precision, a few extra things that pull out some of the seconds and minutes, greater control over the time, stuff like that. Little things like that. And there's the visual upgrade, which isn't just the graphics look better, but as I pointed out today, the graphics also look more distinct. There's a lot better visual distinction. You can tell what you're looking at immediately, precisely, and just bam, boom, that's that. Good color distinction and usage, good usage of outlining, good usage of textures. So a lot of good improvements with regards to the visuals, with regards to the controls, and two negatives with regards to that. One is the bosses, and one is the swimming with regards to how the Zora work. Now, a lot of people disagree on which things are worse. And it's like a gradient, right? Like some people think this is worse, then a lot of people think this is worse, then even more people think this is worse, and everyone thinks it's worse. The one thing that everyone thinks is worse is swimming as a Zora. I don't know what they were thinking with that. A lot of people think the boss is worse. Some people think the visuals is worse. Very few people think the controls are worse. But there's a lot of changes. I'm not going to give you the full list. It's actually a pretty big list. But it also highlights something which is interesting when it comes to this. I just wanted to talk about this briefly, if you'll forgive me. Anytime you do any kind of port, no, that's a wrong word. Anytime you do any kind of remaster or remake, you're always going to run into that problem of how much you should change in what direction. Because you're never going to make enough changes to make everyone happy, right? It's impossible. The fact that Jesse's Mask and I right now disagree on the changes in this version already proves my point for me. I don't need to go past two people a sample size of 2 to make my point. Anytime you go out and make this kind of remaster or remake, you're going to alienate at least some of your audience. And there's nothing you can do about that, really. As weird as that sounds. Because you might say, oh, well, just don't change anything. First of all, we have a word for that. That's called a port. But second of all, you will alienate some of your viewers and players if you just make a port. Because some people are like, well, why would I just buy the same game again? Like, if you did a port of Resident Evil 4 right now, I don't care. I'll just go play the original, right? But then you do a remake of it. Is it better or worse? You get the idea. It's just, I don't have much to say here. It's just an interesting thing to think about. It might explain a little bit of why some creative types, financial types love remasters, because then they could just sell the game for less production time, less development time, sell the game, boom. But creative types tend to be more hesitant about going into remasters, and most especially remakes. And I think there's a reason why remakes, I think there's 2 reasons, but I think there's a creative reason why remakes are so much rarer than remasters, which are rarer than ports. Yeah, George Lucas, that's actually a good example. George Lucas did a lot of changes to Star Wars with his special edition. And honestly, I imagine most of you in chat right now can name at least one of those changes you actually liked. You can also probably name at least one of those changes you didn't like. That's the nature of the beast. Anyways, that's all. I just wanted to comment on that briefly. But we are, of course, playing the 3DS version. So, let's see how we do. I'm going to go ahead and let this sit for just a minute, because we've got a bit of an intro to go through. I will also admit, I'm rather biased in this whole situation. Of course I prefer this version of the game. I never would have even played through the game if it wasn't, remastered forward onto the 3DS. So I kind of have that automatic bias. I never would have been able to enjoy this game if this version didn't exist. So, inherent bias there. Whoa there. No, Jesse's Mask, and I never will. I actually did make another attempt right about when this came out, and I couldn't do it. Favorite mask? Well, that's easy. Goron. Ooh. No, it'd still be the N64 version, Pillars of Snow. Why couldn't I play through it? Well, okay, that's a valid question. Do you like Fallout 1, Loke the Night Reaper? I swear I'm going somewhere with this. Okay. I don't. I hate Fallout 1. I think it's a terrible game. I actually played it back in the day and formed that opinion back when it first came out. And then I was forced to play through it again for the show, at which point I codified my opinion that I actually can't stand that game. That's Majora's Mask on the N64 for me. Does that make sense? Something we've talked about before. I need to come up with a lorium for this at some point. Is the Face of Nightmares. I need to come up with a lorium for this at some point, because in my brain, what I think of is I don't like old games. But obviously that's objectively not true, right? I mean, some of my favorite games ever predate Majora's Mask on the N64 and Fallout 1 by several years. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is I don't like games that play old. I don't like games that are irritating or frustrating to play. I don't like games that have the opposite of quality of life features. I don't like games that have irritating or aggravating controls. I don't like games that have cumbersome interfaces, or take too long to save, or waste my time with needless things. Yeah, it's you notice everything I'm talking about is not content, because the content of Fallout 1 is good. The content of Majora's Mask on the N64 is good, but it's the mechanisms that I don't care for. I love these camera angles, by the way. Yeah, the connection point between me and the game is something that I value greatly. Yeah, I don't like taking a walk with rocks in my shoes. That's pretty much the way it is. And that's just me, right? That's just my preference and my opinion and my perspective. I've been playing games for 39 years now, and that's just the opinion I've been at. I love how Link's just hanging out, sitting here on so many of these little shots here. Congrats, Eternus. I was just waiting to see if you succeeded, but yeah, you did. Up top. And he's going to leave me hanging. Okay. Interestingly enough, so I mentioned I don't like drug trips. You know what I really like about this? The freaking moon. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I like dread. I do. I love that type of horror in my games, in my movies, in my shows, in my books. And that thing right there is properly terrifying. And the ticking clock is wonderful for adding to that. Like, I love the concept of dread. Always have. Even when I was young. Yeah, that's me and, well, a lot of games, actually, Jesse's Mask. Dread was a great game, but jokes aside, I'm going to stand by that word usage, because I think it's such a good word to explain the type of horror I do enjoy. Is it just the two that play? It's also kind of an inevitable thing. One of the things, so we didn't really talk about the theme of Ocarina, because Ocarina wasn't really built around a theme. Ocarina kind of develops a theme of childhood and growth, and I was actually going to talk about that more in Twilight Princess, because Twilight Princess did a lot better job of the exact same theme of Ocarina of Time, growing up. This game has a much more prevalent theme than Ocarina. Majora is all about moving on, and how we deal with trauma and tragedy, and how we do or do not move on from it. Something that, if you're paying attention, will also be mentioned in Wind Waker, another big story game for the Zelda series. So, yeah, that's how we deal with death is at least as important as how we deal with life, wouldn't you say? That's a good question, Trax, yeah. Wind Waker certainly would have gone differently. So, I'm not going to spoil too much about this game right now, but all you need to know is all of these people are... this intro is so fantastic because all these people are just walking around, going about their everyday business, and, you know, just walking through the bar, having a thing, hanging out on the bench, you know, just all the little crap they're doing. And as you're paying attention, it started off daytime, and over the course of these cutscenes, time has been moving forward until we get to this last shot, where we see the frickin' moon. And that's the thing. All these people are trying to go around their daily lives while there's this thing in the sky that they know is getting closer, that they know is causing damage. Oh, this is getting a positive, trust me. Yeah, there's just this Lovecraft... Look at that thing, it's horrifying. There's this Lovecraftian nightmare shape that's coming down to cause them cataclysmic damage. What do you do? It is interesting to think about from a real-life perspective, too. But I won't get into that today. So some people deny it, some people embrace it, some people try to fight against it, some people try to do what they can with what they have. The cafe, I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly, side quest is like the perfect encapsulation of the theme of Majora in one quest. Now, granted, it's a long-ass quest, but still, that's the theme of Majora in one sequence, right? So, yeah, no. Sorry. Absolutely a plus. 100%. Yeah, what do you do when you are doomed? I've talked about that concept before, because it doesn't actually come up that often in fiction, at least not the kind of fiction I cover. When you are doomed, what do you do? It's Star Trek, for example, only really touched on this once, and that was with the freaking Borg. And they did some good stuff with that. What do you do when the Borg are coming? And everyone reacted a little bit differently. No, I mean, I know that, Lord Harriman. You'll forgive me for getting just a little bit emotional. Like, life's scary right now, you know? Real life is scary right now, for a lot of places. What do you do? Yeah, honestly, it's not hard to come up with a fantastical version of this. Imagine, real quick, imagine the Borg are coming in real life. There's a cube. We've seen it. You know, we watch the sky for a living. We have a lot of people who do a lot of stuff to watch the sky for a living here in real life. It's not like in movies where it's like, oh my god, they're in orbit. No, we would know well in advance. There's a Borg cube on its way. They're coming here. That's game. There's nothing we could do about that. Yeah, how do you even process that? Yeah, what do? Eat a bullet. That's a valid answer. I'm sorry. I don't want to get into suicide, YouTube. But honestly, if that really was the situation, that is a valid answer. Anyways, I'm sorry. No, I haven't, Loke. I didn't mean to seem like I was ignoring you. I've never played that. No. I'm too pragmatic, Viv. It's too much math up here for me not to do something like that. If the Borg were actually coming. Like, and you kind of have to know, too, right? I know that quote, Lord Harriman. Yeah, trauma's always step one. Step two? It's up to you. So anyways, after that lovely bit of joy, so to be clear, this is an indirect sequel to Ocarina of Time. Let me talk about what that means really quick here. Yeah, but if you knew, Lunaruth, if you didn't know, then congrats. Your first warning will be when they're sticking nanites into you. So let's talk about the difference really quick of inside out too. No, let's talk the difference between indirect sequels and direct sequels. It doesn't necessarily matter. It's only a bit of a categorization. A direct sequel is a sequel in which the plot and substance of the sequel are directly a follow-through of the previous work. Or, to phrase that differently, you could put this work and this work together and they form one story, right? In other words, Ocarina and Wind Waker is the perfect example here. Wind Waker is part 2 of Ocarina in basically every way. An indirect sequel is something that follows the events of a previous work, may be a little bit impacted and affected by, characters change and personalities change and all that. But an indirect sequel kind of just then goes and does its own thing. It is another story that does not necessarily have to do with the previous work. Make sense? So this is an indirect sequel. It's the same Link. It happens pretty much immediately after the events of Ocarina of Time, and a scene we'll actually see play out in Twilight Princess, but it isn't specifically and directly informed by the events of Ocarina. In fact, the only thing that this really has anything to do with Ocarina is Link is off looking for Navi because he misses her, and then Majora's Mask happens. Make sense? That's the purpose and point of an indirect sequel. Nothing wrong with that, of course. But yes, this is the past now. This is the second timeline, the one that will lead directly to Twilight Princess. Yeah, this is Zelda's mistake. In the land of Hyrule, there echoes a legend held dearly by the royal family of a young boy. A boy who, after battling evil and saved Hyrule, crept away from the land that made him a legend. Done with the battles he once waged across time, he embarked on a journey, and a secret and personal journey for a beloved and invaluable friend. A friend with whom he parted ways when he finally fulfilled his heroic destiny and took his place amongst legends. So I was trying to talk about... Yeah, he never finds her, by all accounts. Some people have argued he's not actually searching for Navi, which just proves that anybody will take any interpretation they can on the internet. Sadly, I do not actually remember Darksiders 2 sufficient to answer your questions are. I apologize. Yeah, no, it's like 99%. This is something that frustrates me whenever I see this. Because a lot of times fiction will not have a character turn to the camera and say, hey, he's looking for Navi. By the way, I already love the storyboarding. Instead, they will use visual storytelling and storytelling cues and inclination and implication in order to tell their story. You know, good storytelling. Damn you, Miyamoto. Damn you! You see the mask before the Skull Kid, which probably on purpose. But anyway, so people have this thing where if a game or a show or a book or a movie doesn't literally say something in universe, then it's not true or it doesn't count or whatever. This is tremendously frustrating to me because, as I said, if a game or a show, a book or a movie actually says something outright like that, generally that's bad writing. Like that's media illiterate, as several people pointed out. That's just we have a term for that's called on the nose writing. You know, we could say, this game isn't about thematically such and such because someone didn't actually say it's about thematically such and such. How do we know that character's sad? Sure, they're sitting there sobbing and looking at someone with red-stained tears as they're just desperately trying to reach out to them, but they didn't tell me that they're sad. So maybe they're not actually sad. Maybe they're angry. Maybe they're just having constipation. I don't know. There's some options here. And I'm barely exaggerating. I have seen so many people come up with so many nonsense answers for scenes that don't have questions. Because the game or the show or the book or the movie didn't spell it out overtly. So, back to the game in question. So we've already got... I'm sorry. Random rant. Apologies. I was reminded of that. But the other thing. Yeah, listen, Savacom, I need to know if they're constipated. I want to know exactly what composition of what food excrement is in their bowels. And I want to know exactly what time to the minute that's coming out eventually. After they have a bunch of coffee. Now. And yeah, no, exactly. They accuse you of headcanon. And it's like, you're... What? No, it's just your headcanon that he's looking for Navi. No, it isn't. He's looking for Navi. Of course he is. That's so obvious. So Ocarina of Time already had good camera work, good animations, and good storyboarding. That's awesome. I was actually a little bit surprised this particular time around, pay attention to the cutscenes. I wanted to bring that up here because, with the camera and Link walking through, shots through the trees, kind of the camera zooms in, and we see just enough of Link kind of looking off to the side. The primary focus is on Epona, which we've apparently tamed again, and Tattle and Tail, and then that's great camera work. You notice immediately and right off the bat, it's not only the same good camera work and storyboarding and animation from before, it's actually a little bit better. They have already upped their game in the first cutscene. So, Skull Kid is here. He's like, and of course we've already... Yeah, Sari is fine in this timeline. There's no issues there. And he's already interacted with us a little bit. That shouldn't be a problem. And yeah, first Majora's Mask is visible, then the Skull Kid is visible. Notice, watch the animation of the Skull Kid here for a second. Just for real, just watch all the little details here. What a pretty ocarina. Hey, Skull Kid, let me touch it. I want to see. You can't, Tail. What would we do if you dropped it and broke it? No way, you can't touch it. Bullying. Sis, why can't I try it too? And notice, just like a child, he's just making a little note and then giggling about it. And then this. And just like a child, he immediately hides the source of his crime, even though he arguably has nothing to fear from us. Skull Kid is 100% a child. Whether Majora is or not, that's a much bigger question. And yeah, this is pretty clearly Skull Kid. Majora's another thing. To be perfectly honest, I'm just going to say this right up front. We don't know what Majora is. We don't know who Majora is, or if even Majora can be qualified as a who. We can infer, because we can do that because we're media literate, about Majora, but that's kind of it. So let's talk about our initial kit. So we've got a sword, we've got a shield. We can actually block properly with our shield now. This was actually done for programming reasons, not any others. But the fact that Link has plenty of experience with the shield probably helps with that, narratively speaking. We've also got just a little bit more precise movement than the previous game. It's hard to even explain, but having literally played Ocarina today, it's just a little bit snappier and a little bit more precise. So already we've got the same generally good controls, but improved even better. It's good stuff. It's great stuff. So, yeah. Gonna be all kinds of positives on that front. And yeah, we'll talk about jumping in just a second, by which I mean right now. Because Link can do that. Of course he freaking can. This is a well-seasoned Link. Remember, regardless of his body, mentally, Link has been through all of Ocarina of Time. He retains all that knowledge and skill. Also, yeah, let's take a moment to appreciate the textures. A lot of this is reused from the 3DS version update, but once again, a lot of work and effort has been put into color selection, texture outlining, general visual fidelity. Again, whether it looks better or worse to your preference, that's on you. But I have to point out that from a game design perspective, the visuals do a very good job of being gameplay visuals. Distinction, which is a plus to gameplay, not to story. So lots and lots and lots of work done to make this game very, very, very visually distinct. So it will absolutely score very well there as well. Then this happens. So, with the advantage of hindsight, I can tell you this is us going to Termina. We are now in an alternate dimension. Congrats. Just like Low Rule, it's something of a parallel dimension. Oh yeah, Link's dead. No, he's not. That's a dumb theory. What's with that stupid horse of yours? It doesn't listen to a word that's said to it. Remember, Epona notoriously doesn't listen to anybody except for anybody who knows her song. There's no point in writing a thing like that, so I did you a favor and got rid of it. Epona is now glue. Hoo-hoo, why the sad face? I just thought I'd have a little fun with you. Oh, come now. Do you really think you can beat me as I am now? Fool. Now, with a little bit of further knowledge and context, this scene makes a lot more sense. All we see right now is this weird, creepy, drug strip thing. Again, literally based on a real-life nightmare about a Deku that one of the developers, I didn't write down his name, forgive me, was actually having. But I'm just going to tell you what's happening right now. What he is doing is he is infusing us with the soul of someone as a curse, which is uniquely messed up, by the way. Obviously, Termina has a thing with masks. We'll talk about that later. But what he has functionally done is used a person's soul as the fuel for a curse. Which again, I can't even put into words how messed up that is. And of course, he's doing it because he's a child, and children can be pretty cruel. They don't really understand these kind of moral things. So, that's a good look for you. That's all he cares about. He's just playing a prank on us. You'll stay here looking that way forever, and then he floats off laughing. That's it. So we, of course, chase after him. And then this happens. And I know I've been pausing to talk, but we're like 2 minutes in, and we've already got our Navi replacement. Skull Kid, wait for me. I'm still here. Tail, you can't leave without me. Love the animations, as usual. I wasn't dealing with you. I wouldn't have gotten separated from my brother. Don't just sit there, Deku boy. Do something. Why are you looking at me like that? Was there something stuck on my face? Will you stop staring and just open the door for me? Please? Come on, a helpless little girl is asking you. So, hurry up! Oh, Tail. I wonder if that child will be alright on his own. And yes, this is Tattle, and the other one is Tail. At least that's how I say it. So, we just had a gameplay section as Link. Now we have a gameplay section as Deku Link. And we don't know how to do most of the stuff we can do yet. I just happen to, because I've played this game before. But I just want to say, this is better than dodge rolling in every way. Yeah, exactly, Jesse's Mask. Skull Kid just isn't thinking about anything, just like a child would. So yeah, there's that audio spam negative, probably gone. So now, we've already had the basic controls tutorial. So, that stuff back there, I apologize, so take me with you. I don't know about the Skull Kid who just ran off, right? Well, I happen to have an idea of where he might be going. Take me with you and I'll help you out. Deal? Good, it's settled. Now then, I'll be your partner. At least until we catch that Skull Kid. My name's Tattle, so, it's nice to meet you or whatever. Now we got all that straightened out. Can we stop messing around and get moving? Here's this button you could hit to talk to me at any time. And Link's just like, oh my god. Hey, if I call you, press this right away. I can tell you're not used to your Deku scrub body yet. Alright, listen up. You press this, and there's a tutorial, and here's a tutorial, and here's a tutorial. Yes. I got all this. Thank you. So there's your basic tutorial in both text and gameplay format. The text format we just saw, and I just skipped through that. Listen, it just makes sense, Jesse's Mouse. But, even if we can't read English, this is something I bang on about a lot. I like tutorials that get across information without a word of dialogue, right? Super Metroid, Mario World, Ocarina, and Majora's Mask. So, okay, we've got these big-ass flowers that we can interact with. If we fall down, like I just did, we cannot get back up. No button press will get me back up. Mega Man X1, yep, another good one. Sonic 1, apparently. I keep hearing Doom 1, EM11. E1M1. God, I can't talk. It's really nice to have a tutorial that has no language. So if you look around here, there's nothing here that we can interact with. Well, the controls are a little bit different. Except this. And this is one of our gimmicks for the Deku. And we pretty much start off a gimmick. Oh yeah, also, this goes back to that visual distinction thing I talked about. I mean, this is obvious, but really, that is very well designed to stand out immediately in this environment. Not just against the grass it's against, but against the entire rest of the room. Nothing else in this room pops the way that those flowers do. It's very bright, it's got pink and orange, and it's well outlined. Also, even the green is a different shade. So now that we know how to do that, we can figure out how to get across here. Boom. How do you touch the bottom screen with the normal button? I don't think you do. I never figured that out in Ocarina. I just kept reaching out to hit it with my mouse as if I was doing a touchpad, like this right here. Or like this. I feel like there's a way to... Hang on. So, start. Nope. Select. Nope. No, I'm wrong. Whatever. So, that was our tutorial. Let's prove that you've actually figured out what you're doing. One thing I'm not a huge fan of is they change the FOV a little bit when you do that. I get why they do it. They do it so you have more vision, so you can see more of what you're doing while you're flying. But I think that it could have been done a little bit better. Yes, here's how you use items, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, the camera also tilts down a little bit, and that shadow is nicely distinct. You know how dark that shadow is right there? Again, visual distinction. Making sure that you can see that shadow is very important. I know plenty of video games who have a shadow, but good luck seeing it. In fact, one of the Zelda games we just played, I don't remember which one, I think it was one of the DS ones, did not actually have that distinct of a shadow. Oh yeah, also, you can do this to literally just look down like that. It's strange, but the way you look right now sort of reminds me of this tree. It's all dark and gloomy, almost like it could start crying any second now. How sad. Yeah, this is extraordinarily messed up. There you go, see? You can do it if you try. When I float to people or objects, you can do this. This is how L targeting works. Yeah. Anyways, I'm sorry that Majora murdered you. So that we could be cursed like this. Made sure it's right next to the door, too, so we couldn't really avoid it. So the exact moment we enter Termina actually varies. Varies is the wrong word. People disagree with where it happens. I personally think that what we just did is the finish of the transition. But that's because I think of it rather than as a binary thing, as a gradient thing. I think we were already in, let's call it a bit of a trans-dimensional hub. And it makes a lot of sense a place like the Lost Woods, which is already mythical and magical, and already has a bit of fae thing going on. We probably entered a place of morphicness, right? And then when we went through this specific path, that's when we went through the final thing, and that was the exit door, and thus the transition is now concluded. And now we are officially in Termina. We have finished entering Termina. That's just my take. Because I would also say the beginning of that was probably when we fell down the hole. Lovely place, by the way. Lovely, lovely brickwork. Oh yeah, the Sheikah Hintstones are back, by the way. You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you? Sorry. Love the animation. I own the Happy Mask Shop. I travel far and wide in search of masks. During my travels, a very important mask was stolen me by an imp in the woods. So here I am at a loss, and now I found you. Don't think me rude, but I have been following you. For I know of a way to return you to your former self. If you can get back the precious item that was stolen from you, I will return you to normal. In exchange, all I ask is you get back my precious mask Liam stole from me. What? Is it not a simple task? Quick aside. When making a task video, like we talked about earlier today, part of the process of that, to put it up on the task video site, is selecting a screenshot. If you actually pull up any task videos on taskvideos.org, you'll see a specific screenshot there to indicate the shot. Those aren't random. Someone sat down and thought about that. Someone actually pulled out a specific frame that they felt best indicated the type of run it was, or it was interesting or funny or whatever. One of the most suggested frames for one of the earliest Majora's Mask tasks was this screen, but because the text rendered differently on the N64 version, it was, what, is it not a simple task? And they would cut off the frame before the K rendered. Random anecdote. Someone like you, it should be by no means a difficult task. Except... the one thing is, I'm a very busy fellow. And I must leave this place in 3 days. Trust me, we all want to leave this place in 3 days. The evacuation ship's coming, and we got a schedule to keep. How grateful I'd be if you could bring it to me before my time here is up. But yes, you'll be fine. I see you're young and have tremendous courage. I'm sure you'll find it right away. One more thing, please be so kind as to direct your gaze over there for a moment. Here's this new thing we added for the 3DS section. It's really cool. It's 2 pluses to gameplay. Oh, he doesn't even mention the moon. Why would he? So, let's see. We've got, obviously, the Mario mask. I gotta point out the Mario mask. Oh, God, what are those stupid things called? The one on the lower left there, not the Elvis mask. There's actually a name for that type of mask, the red and black thing. And there's a DS game about that. Oh, God, that's actually gonna bother me. Hang on, what's the name of that stupid game? One second. In Majora's Mask, there is not. In real life, still working on that. First, we have to get a place to evacuate to. Then we have to get the ship going. We got accommodations. It's a whole thing. Have a good day at work, Baron. Is this it? No, that's not it. This is going to bother me. Yeah, we'll just enchant the moon. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Here it is. Here it is. Hey, Valerian. Amazing Island. Came out in 2004, so it's actually after this. Wait, no, that's not right. No, that's it. That's it. Maybe? I don't know. Anyways, point being, that they both use that same type of mask. That's all I had to add to that. Sorry, it was just bugging me. I couldn't think of the name of the game. Over on this side, we've got a screaming death mask. We've got a demon mask. Gotta have a demon mask. We've got one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And we've got a Lucha Libre up there on the top. We might not be able to get the camera up here for this. I don't think we can crank the camera. So I'm not sure what the blue mask is exactly. And we gotta have the screaming mask always facing us. That's very important. Because, we gotta stay as creepy as possible here. Dawn of the first day. 72 hours remain. He gives me the creeps. That masked salesman was the... Sorry, just thinking out loud. 3 days, even if we never sleep, that'll still leave us with a measly 72 hours. Talk about demanding. Don't just stand there, we gotta see the Great Fairy. Look, you wanna find the Skull Kid, don't you? Great Fairy, I know what she's up to. She watches over everything. And just between you and me, Skull Kid's no match for the Great Fairy. You wanna bet on that? Pretty sure the Great Fairy lives in a shrine somewhere in the town. Where? Well, somewhere. Don't press me for details. I don't come to this town very often. Start talking to one of the kids who hang around. One of them might know where the shrine is. Okay, so pause, 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 pause. I can't pause the game. That'll have to work as a pause. Okay, so I'm thinking 38 negatives to gameplay and 107 to story. Let me actually think, because we actually have a lot to process. I think I have Kitten Fan, but I'm going to be honest, I don't remember what they said. Clock Town, right? Yep, that's where we're at. Apparently 2 words. Clock Town. So let's get this out of the way really quick. A lot of people don't like the timer in this game. Now, like a lot. It's actually the single biggest complaint I tend to hear about this game, and it's kind of mandatory to the structure of the game. Like, there's no removing the timer from this game. It's not possible. It would not be the same game at its very bones if the timer was removed. Not just because of the obvious fact that you've got the ticking clock, but the whole game is set on a schedule. A game that... When did Oblivion come out? 2004, I want to say? This game predates Oblivion by 4 years and managed the same general concept. Smaller scale, but still. 2006, excuse me, 6 years. The schedule is, in my opinion, actually one of the most impressive aspects of this game. I know that sounds stupid, but let me try to explain what I mean by that. Because the way the game is programmed is every single character has essentially a line that's drawn on the map across all 3 days. No, I'm thinking of Oblivion. Morrowind doesn't have a schedule. And each of those lines, every character at X point of time is at X part of line. The most, you can actually see this physically. It's really, really obvious because all you have to do is do the slow down time thing, and you will see people physically move slower because the obvious idea is that their destination is dependent on when you're at on the clock. And if you slow down the clock, then they move slower because what's actually happening is it's saying you're here at this point, you're here at this point. If you've ever done keyframing in animation, it's a similar concept. Here at frame 1, here at frame 2, transition between the two, right? And then you add a whole bunch of those, and that's the route people take and the things that people do and the animations that people will do. Now, I don't want to oversell it. Not every single NPC in the game has massive, hundreds and hundreds of lines. That would be insane, especially given the extremely small development time they had. But there are several characters who do move around and go to certain spots and have certain routes and all that. All of that stuff is, in my opinion, the most technically impressive aspect of this game. That took work and time and effort and creativity, and it's shocking that they were able to pull that off on the N64. Now, granted, this was late N64. N64 was already kind of on its way out at this point. And it also required that expansion pack, the memory pack, in order to be able to functional, but still, holy crap. I'm sorry, I derailed a little bit. But that's why I say you can't get rid of the timer. It's not really possible. The timer is literally how the game is constructed. But I get why people don't like that, legitimately. Like, I get the idea. I get the concept. I get that people are like, no, thank you. That is what it is. There's nothing about it. There's nothing. It's if you make a game entirely focused around the idea of, God, I don't know. I can't. I'm actually I'm having trouble thinking of another parallel example. I was trying to think of another actual game that's like this. Okay, I've got it. This is a dumb example, but bear with me. If you just really do not like driving a car, then you're not really going to like GTA 5. You kind of can't really enjoy GTA 5 if you don't get into driving, right? I mean, obviously, all of GTA 5 isn't about the driving, but you can see why I'm using this as a direct parallel. Driving is at a fundamental core. It's a bone. It's central pillar of how GTA 5 operates and functions, right? And yeah, this is why the concept of coffee exists. Because some people are just going to be put off by something because it includes something like a timer or something like driving or whatever, right? So for me, that's easy. If it's a horror game, a true horror game, not like a dread game, it doesn't matter how good that horror game is. I'm going to look at that and be like, yeah, no, I'm good. Thanks. It's probably a good horror game. I have no way of judging it. But you can't rip the horror out, right? It would be intrinsically losing an aspect of what the game is. Yeah, imagine not liking web slinging and playing the PS4 Spider-Man game. Again, you don't have to web swing in that game, but a lot of the game is built around that bone. Now, having said that, one of the positives this game is going to get, and one of the negatives it's not going to get, because of the fact that this is, in my opinion, superior to the N64 version, is the combination of the notebook and the Sheikah stones. Because I don't know anybody personally who ever managed to do a solid playthrough of this game on the N64 version without relying on a game fax. Now, there's a bit of psychology there, which I'm leaving out of this discussion. Because some people just freak out if they can't do everything on one go, like Blue Fusion Volt just asked. By the way, I don't know off the top of my head. I think it actually requires 3, I want to say. I feel like I remember someone was putting together a hypothetical run, which requires 3 playthroughs. There's the initial one, which we're stuck in. We can't do anything about the first one. And then a second one where they do, like, a huge majority of the game. Like, absolutely stupid amount of the game. No, I'm sorry. A stupid amount of the optional stuff and getting some of the mask. And then the third one is when they finish it up and they do the stuff you have to do for the final thing. Something like that. Anyways, it was something like that. But point being, I don't believe it's physically possible to do it in one loop, even if we ignore the initial mandatory loop. Most speedrunners I know who play Majora's Mask, and I've watched quite a few, absolutely hate the first loop. Because there's only so many things you can do on the first loop, and then you're just waiting. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm not going to ding the game for the timer. Because from a review perspective, what matters is the timer done well? Is Ventures going to give me a sub? If Ventures gives me a sub, well, then that's a plus to gameplay. If Ventures doesn't give me a sub, it's just going to be more negatives. And thank you, Ventures, very, very, very much. As always. Well, it's funny. I shouldn't say they hate it. They only hate the first loop. Most speedrunners I know who play this game love speedrunning this game. There's a lot of routing in Majora's Mask. Remember I talked about earlier, one of the things I love about speedrunning? There's a lot of routing and deciding on how you want to do what and where in this game. And there are many, many, many backup strats in case you screw up a specific thing or hit something like 1 minute too late. It's like, oh, okay, well, time to do this. Okay, so we're doing the grid-based block. Aiden Chronicles. And Unicorn Overlord. Yeah, ironically, this is the kind of game I would love speedrunning if time was something I had an infinite amount of. Okay, so I've given the intro positives. I've given many positives for many other things. It's okay. We'll totally get the fairy sword this time, right? We probably won't. We'll put this here. And then we got to talk about gameplay. So we have the initial tutorialization. Done, Ross. Seriously, I've actually already given that negative. What's really frustrating to me, and I know I'm not trying to be awful, because I know you hate every negative I give a game. Everybody does that. It's just, it's the Joker effect. But what's amusing to me is the moment I get past the general weirdness of the drug trip sequence, the moment I hit the town, I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I'm pretty much immediately into it. It's just, I'm not saying that to do anything other than just admit that it's actually amusing to me. It probably says something about my own preferences on the matter, because again, I don't like drug trips. I don't. You know, I didn't like Dumbo that much. I'm sorry. This goes back to when I was a kid. Or Alice in Wonderland. Or actually, I got a fantastic example for you. I don't like Fantasia. The elephants on parade, parade. The original Fantasia. Or the Willy Wonka fairy sequence, yeah. I made a comment as a child. My mother used to hold this up as an example of how I've always been an analytical type, because when I was very, very young, I figured out pretty quickly that almost every major Disney film had at least one drug sequence in it. Really, think about it. Almost all of them, from Snow White forwards, especially the animated stuff, have at least one drug trip sequence. It was normal. A lot of copied animations, too. I noticed that in Robin Hood. God, that took me a minute. I kept wanting to say Sheriff of Nottingham. I was like, no, the other guy, the fox. Anyways. And yeah, Jungle Book, that's the other one. I don't remember which one came first, but... Yeah, I'll yet remember the swirling eyes and the car chase sequence thing. Act. Oh, here's another one for you. The song Everybody Wants to Be a Cat, the jazz song, good song. Drug sequence. There's another one. I think Little Mermaid has two. Anyways, they stopped doing that after a while. They kind of walked away from the drug sequence thing. But there's a reason why, and this actually came up recently. Someone asked me, what's your favorite Disney film before Little Mermaid? I couldn't come up with one. I'm not into drug sequences. I can appreciate a lot of those films. But the Disney Renaissance pushed the Disney films into something I actually liked personally, and so I tend to prefer those vastly. So that's an interesting question, Jesse's Mask. I thought I liked The Great Mouse Detective. And then, God, like 9 years ago now, I went back and rewatched it. And I don't like The Great Mouse Detective that much. I don't hate it. You know, I don't think it's a bad film. But, like, all of my memories of it were a lot higher than the reality of rewatching the film. It's something I'm sure a lot of people can sympathize with. Oh, thanks for the donut. I got another example of that for you, and I'm going to be crucified for this one. DuckTales, the original. Yeah. That one made me sad. I actually started a rewatch of the whole show. I didn't finish it. Like, there was still some good stuff on display. It's not like it's not like it's a bad show. But it's just like, oh, okay. And it's really frustrating how much the show does this. It's actually shocking. Each story arc, which is usually like a few episodes long, just keeps repeating the same character point and the same plot points over and over and over again. It's weird, honestly. I can't tell you how many times Scrooge learned a lesson about caring about his family and then would immediately forget it and then learn a lesson about caring about his family. Like, just over and over and over again. Now, Pinocchio's an interesting one, because obviously Pinocchio has a drug sequence. It's a literal drug sequence. But it's kind of interesting because they used it a bit more. Usually in Disney films, the drug sequences are just there to be drug sequences. Like, what's the point of the elephants on parade in Dumbo, narratively? I'm just going to tell you right now, the answer is none. It's just the animators going off and having fun for a bit. But the Pinocchio one was actually part of the narrative. It was part of what was happening with a child slaver and like human trafficking thing. It was actually built into the horribleness of what was happening with, I can't remember his name, but the guy who was running the whole show. That's messed up. But at least it's being used for purpose and intent, so I can appreciate that more. I can be like, oh my god, you know. The Coachman, that was him. The Coachman. Of course it is Lord Harriman. Think about the era. No, yeah, the Coachman just gets away with everything. It's really messed up. All right, sorry, hang on. So, after that bit of sunshine, so I've typed out most of my initial thoughts. Lots of positives. Lots of positives for the intro. Now we get to, well arguably, the second half of the intro. So we've got a Puppers, who likes to dodge us. Doesn't actually damage us, by the way. That's actually important. We've got a Flower we can interact with. No, we can't. But actually, it's our very, very first side quest here. Very quickly. This is my private property. Don't try to use it when I'm not around. Ah, I missed him. I think that was him. Yep, there he is. Right there. Man. So, time doesn't pause when you're in a conversation. Not a big fan of that. I don't think that ever really screws you over, but it's still something I would rather not be a thing. That is good. And it's... So, let's go ahead and do the main quest first really quick here. And then we'll talk about this initial section. We should also probably go ahead and get our first thing. I actually forget exactly how these things work in the original, but I do know that they're better in this version. I just don't remember how, so please don't quote me on it right now. Yeah, time pauses and transitions and menus, and when an actual cutscene's happening. By the way, Tingle came from this game, so thanks for that, Majora. Green clothes, white fairy. Sir, could you by chance be a forest fairy? Why? My name is Tingle. I think I'm the same as you, sir. A forest fairy. Alas, I'm already age 35. No fairy has come to me yet. Nice nose, by the way. My father tells me to grow up and act my age, but why? I tell you, Tingle is the very reincarnation of a fairy. Now, while I stand here waiting for a fairy of my own, I shall sell maps to help out my father. You're so lucky to have a fairy. I know. We should be friends. Yes, yes. In exchange, I'll sell you a map for cheap as a sign of my friendship. Sure. And that's how we get maps. Tingle literally forgot. Do you know how to use my maps? Yes, I do. Thank you. Tingle, tingle, kulu, limpa, as the saying goes. These are the magical words that Tingle made himself. Don't steal them. And yes, this is probably the only version of Tingle that isn't some kind of horrible person to some extent or another. Although I didn't mind him in Four Swords. He was mostly a joke there. Now. And yeah, there's actually a story and character to Tingle in this game, too. What are you doing? You have successfully startled me. Now come to me so I may throw you on my bed. Throw. Throw.
You never get me.
Already have you. Yeah.
Looks like your hair coming down.
I did. What are you doing, baby?
He went to fuck. He knew where I was going. I get up in an airplane.
Hey, ready? Fly! Whoosh!
I know. This airplane's broken. My turn.
Come here. Come here, baby. We gotta say goodbye to stream first, okay?
Here we go. And then
Hang on, hang on. Can you be patient, please? Okay. Can you say bye, stream?
What's
No,
this?
bye. Bye, stream.
What's
There you go. Bye.
What's this?
And now to eat you. Mwah. Mwah.